Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another critique session. Thanks ever so much for those of you that watched last week's video. Really appreciate it, and also leaving comments. That was just great. It's great to get the viewers involved in our other viewers' photographs. So thank you for that. As I've said, the whole point of these critique sessions is not to slam anybody's photography. It's not to tell people how they should take photographs. On the contrary, the whole point of this is just to give our point of view as professionals. You can take it or leave it. It's just my opinion and Alister's opinion. The hope is that perhaps you'll pick up some tips on a way to approach a scene in the future, or perhaps even some processing tips. Who knows? I should mention that it's quite funny because Alister, when I edit these videos, I haven't watched Alister's clips until I actually edit the videos, and it's quite funny how Alister will often say something completely opposite to what I have to say. So it just goes to show that there is no right or wrong way to take photographs, and if anything, I would encourage you to ignore the norms of photography and really experiment and go your own direction. And I'm sure a lot of you already do that, but for those of you that are just starting, I highly recommend that you experiment and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and learn from your successes as well. So without further delay, let's get into this week's critique session.
That's the funny thing about critiquing photographs. It's so much easier to critique other people's photographs than your own. Sometimes it's really hard to look at your own photographs with a critical eye. And when I look at this image, I mean, there isn't an awful lot that, if anything, that I would change. I think Bruno has done an awesome job in isolating this tree from the background. Forests are very busy places to photograph, and the only way to really separate trees from the background or other trees is by environmental things that are happening around those trees, whether it be fog, or in this case we have some light hitting that tree. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I think Bruno has done an awesome job in first of all identifying that this tree is standing out considerably from the background just because of the light. If the light had been perhaps flat, or there'd been more light in the background, then this probably wouldn't work. And because this tree has such a nice structure to it, the light and the moss have really separated it from that otherwise very, very busy background. So, as I said, there isn't an awful lot that I would change with this. I would be quite happy with a photograph like this if I had taken it myself. The only thing that I might have changed or change is this section here on the left side, especially this. It looks like a root from another tree or something down here. It's a little bit distracting, so I would probably just tone that down just a little bit. This section here looks like Bruno has darkened this already, and perhaps he's darkened this side as well, but I would try and tone this corner down and this whole side here. Excuse me. Because as I look at this, I mean, my eye goes straight to the tree here, but then it goes down into this corner here. So we've got to find ways to do that. Sometimes in my own photography, it might not work in this one, but I'll use a radial gradient tool. I'll just invert that just to darken the edges slightly. Now this might be a bit too drastic, but as you can see, by doing that, we've really drawn your attention more to this central portion. And of course, we can refine this. This is just a quick and dirty example. Oh, let's try and bring this up to, say, 50% here. And I do this quite often with my own photographs. I'll reduce the size of them and just put an extra huge radial tool on them, so you can really move it around and make it even more subtle. So like something like that might work. And then we'll just make that fit. So you can see already we've already subdued this quite a bit, and I think overall it's helped bring more attention to the center here. But nice photograph. Really enjoyed it.
I think there's an awful lot to like in this photograph. I think when trees like this are side lit, with the moss, the beautiful moss showing on that right hand side, we do get this incredible sense of something very much alive. Now, I know that's going to sound a little bit Age of Aquarius, but you know, it's more than, to me, it's more than just a tree. It becomes sort of very animated, and you know, you can understand the sort of Lord of the Rings, Ent mythologies and stuff like that. So the overall feeling of this is obviously so joyous, you know, the beautiful yellowy green mosses on the side of the tree there. Somewhat classically composed, everything feels very balanced, all of these branches reaching out into the background birches there is really effective. If I turn off the lights there, I'm always looking at feel. What's the image saying to me? So we've got a very vertical trunk here. We've got lots of horizontals. So even though it's somewhat chaotic, it's also somewhat ordered. It's dividing the space very evenly. The distribution of midtones is the peak of the image is in the dark midtones moving into the shadows and the blacks there. There are very few highlights, most of which are going to be on the illuminated moss and also down this birch that's somewhat catching the light also, and there are no whites. So this is very much an image that's in the midtones, the darker midtones and shadows, and therefore it's going to feel on the slightly darker side. So it's darker than average, shall we say. As soon as we start to darken it more, it's going to get more and more and more mysterious. And I think that is the way that I would be trying to control the mood of this image, is to sort of say, right, how dark would it want to be to convey different emotions? At the moment, it's dark, but it's open, if that makes sense, if that's not kind of an oxymoron. So one of the things I'm a little bothered about is the brightness of this birch here. It runs very close to the edge of the frame, and by doing so, it does catch my attention. This is kind of quite bright on the side of the birch, close to the edge of the frame. So those two things are kind of drawing me into that area a little bit when I absolutely want to be stuck on that side. So there may be a way to just consider maybe dropping the whites on that side, you know, just subtly, just take the luminosity out of those brighter tones, and that way you can see how quickly we can just negate that, and it makes it feel a bit more like this stuff. And that way we're kind of vignetting with this sort of grey mass by taking the brightness out of that left-hand side. I think that would be the simplest adjustment that I would want to make. Maybe pull it in a touch more to about there. And that way I just feel we're getting rid of that kind of escape route that I kind of see on the left-hand side there. It feels just a bit too tense. And this way we're kind of really getting the tree much more focused in the middle here. There is some strange distributions of luminosity. There's some brighter bits, and I'm just wondering if that's how it's been processed. You know, whether it's been done with a brush or something like that. I might like to try and reduce those midtones and increase the brights a touch more, just to create a bit more impact of the tree itself. But overall, I think this is a super image. It's the type of thing I'd point my camera at, certainly. The other thing that I'm not massively keen on is the way this drops off there. I think it just feels a little messy down in that particular corner. Not quite sure how we can remedy that. I mean, that's a compositional issue. I'm not sure if I would have liked either less of that or maybe it continuing right through to the bottom right of the frame there. But for me, the point of this critique is very much to understand the role of rogue luminosity on parts of the frame. Understanding that there is a consequence of every single pixel in a composition, and you can see just that short little gradient that I pulled in from the left hand side has allowed us to close that door a little bit. We haven't changed anything, we haven't moved anything, we haven't cloned anything, but in the original on the left here we're just seeing that bright edge quite close to the frame. And in my version, we're managing to get rid of that. And I think I've also darkened mine a tiny fraction and increased the luminosity of the highlights just to create a tiny little bit more contrast between the background and the tree itself. But yeah, wonderful image, beautiful light, and yeah, pleasure to look at.